guys, DevilHunterXYZ, and I've been wanting to make this type of video for quite some time. I just have never gotten a chance to do this until now. But yeah, what I want to do is actually kind of go about showcasing my trophies, kind of discussing some of the more memorable trophies, or at least kind of going through each of the games and kind of giving my overall opinion on the trophies themselves. Yeah, as right now, I'm level 21, 69%. 33, 67 trophies altogether, 64 platinums, and as you can see here, I mean, I have made it my goal to always not just platinum the trophies, but I want to 100% all the possible games that I have. Of course, you know, like some of them were pretty quick to platinums, some of them took months, but I always kind of made my goal to try to platinum and 100% all my games, which kind of leads to the thing where, in my opinion, I say there are two types of trophy hunters. There are those who just go after the easy base trophies, just try to accumulate as many possible trophies as they can. I mean, and with that, it kind of leads to those types of trophy hunters going after easy games or games that are just not that great. I guess games that just provide easy trophies, whether the games themselves are terrible. I guess, for instance, like Terminator Salvation, where all the trophies are just gold and it just requires you to beat the game, essentially. Yeah, there's those types of trophy hunters, but I kind of fall into the other category where I'm the type of trophy hunter that likes to at least platinum 100% the games themselves. And unfortunately with that, it kind of has a little bit of a drawback where you kind of have to sometimes avoid certain games, mostly like online-based games that require, you know, a lot of like hours spent online, or they're those games that the server's no longer available, so it's impossible to even achieve platinum legitly anyway. So you tend to avoid those types of games, and unfortunately, in that case, you know, there have been times where I would have liked to, go through some of the games in my time, you know, like maybe a Motorstorm Pacific Rift. Granted, there's nothing really stopping me from just getting the game now and then, you know, making a separate account. I could potentially do that, but I mean, I really don't because most likely some games have DLC or stuff that I might be interested in, and I'd rather not pay for additional content for an account I really don't care for, or stuff like that. So, but I digress. That's just me anyway. But what I'm here to do is kind of just go through the list. It's right now, it's in the order of when I've earned the trophies themselves. So yeah, kind of give my overall impression as to the trophies I got for each of these games. Yeah, so I guess starting off with Resistance 2. Yeah, so Resistance, well, for one thing, the trophy system didn't even start until late, I think it was like late 2008. Yeah, because the PS3 came out in 2006. For like the first 2 years, there was no trophies whatsoever. It was like a later edition. But for me, Resistance 2 was the very first game ending up getting the trophies. I mean, for the most part, Resistance 2 was it was a pretty good game. I actually think out of the entire Resistance series, I say Resistance 2 was like the best, in my opinion anyway. Of course, others can argue that maybe the first game was better, but granted, the first game didn't even have trophies, although they had in-game achievements for that one. But for here, I'd like the fact that this game was split up into a standard campaign, then you had a co-op mode, and then a competitive mode, which I really did like. I mean, for the most part, it's just more or less completing the game, getting a certain number of kills, collecting intel, stuff like that. I think really the only interesting one was OMG WTF BBQ, which just required you to beat the game on the hardest difficulty, Superhuman, which was challenging, but nothing really too impossible. And then there's that, and then there was also Killing Machine, which that one took long time to get 10,000 kills in ranked competitive mode. which, yeah, that took quite a bit of time. But yeah, for the most part though, yeah, standard resistance 2 trophies, nothing too out there. Second one, Echo Chrome. For those who are not really familiar with Echo Chrome, it's kind of more in like a monochromatic game where essentially you're using perspective to try to solve puzzles. And I mean, it's a simple game. I just kind of went with Echo Chrome back then because I was somewhat interested in it. Although unfortunately to this day I have not played Echo Chrome 2 yet. I don't know if I would consider it, but I mean, really, for the most part, the only thing memorable here, honestly, was probably just completing all the courses. Yeah, I mean, it was just completing all the courses. That's really it. Nothing really too spectacular here with Echo Chrome. The Eye of Judgment. I haven't played that one in a long time, honestly. Yeah, so with the Eye of Judgment, it was like a weird gimmicky type card game. I mean, unfortunately, it never took off. I mean, it was only just that one single game. Well, there was that one game, but then there was also that spin-off, the Eye of Judgment Legends. But it has little relation to this game, and honestly, if you're gonna go with Eye of Judgment, just go with the original. So I think Eye of Judgment for me, I think this was actually, I was combining the trophies. I was doing Resistance 2, but I think I was also doing Eye of Judgment at the same time as well. Although at the time, I really didn't. This was at the time I didn't really care about trophy hunting. I was just trying to beat the game. But granted, you had like a whole load of challenges. The big problem though with the Eye of Judgment was the fact that you couldn't really progress much with just the starter deck. Yeah. I mean, I had the starter deck, but then I eventually had to cough up money to get, get some of the additional cards, set 1 cards. That's all I really have, set 1. There was 3 sets of cards. I only have just most of the set 1s, and to really make any use out of this, because some of these do require you to have certain types of cards in order to really get these trophies, like being able to have 5 monolith fields. One of them required that, yeah, or being able to destroy all enemies at once in a single turn or something like that. So it was interesting. It was interesting, but I mean, it just didn't really take off, unfortunately. I mean, I would like to see a revival of the Eye of Judgment, but I really doubt that's ever going to happen, considering how much it even cost back then, because I think it was about $90 when it first came out, which a little bit over the top. Although granted, with that bundle pack, it did came with the camera, the PlayStation Eye, so there's that. Tekken 6, which I say by far is my favorite Tekken series. And well, I mean, what was different about this one was the fact that there was no regular story mode per se. It had this scenario campaign where you basically get to technically choose whatever character you want to play as and progress through multiple stages. In a way, it was similar to like the Tekken Force from like Tekken 3 or 4, but like, really expanded. And honestly, anything memorable here besides just completing a scenario campaign. I know for some of them it required you to get additional levels that were in the campaign, but that required you to actually beat the game first, and then you had to go back and get the other levels. Oh yeah, no key for me. Beating the Millennium Tower without the boot up key. Yes, that one was challenging. One specific mission, scenario campaign, required you to... Well, it gave you the option to use the Nancy machine, which is like an all-out battle tank filled with like rockets, lasers, Gatling guns. I mean, if you use that, yeah, the stage itself is kind of a breeze. But I mean, yeah, the key thing is to go through the stage without using it. At that point, then it's kind of all hell breaks loose at that point. Of course, a couple of online matches. I think arcade, gallery. Okay, Machine Crusher was another memorable one for me. Defeat Nancy M1847J. Yes, so I guess along with that, in arcade mode, you had the 6 standard matches, and then after the six match, then it leads into a bonus match against Nancy here, and of course it took me roughly about a dozen attempts. I think I was using Heihachi at the time just to even try to beat it, but yeah, it was really kind of a unfair type match, considering the Nancy machine had at least like almost 10 times the amount of health of a normal Tekken character, and along with that, you're also on this glass elevator, and at times the Nancy machine uses the laser to cut holes on the ground, so you had to kind of be careful where you step, or you just fall and you immediately lose the match. And you only get one chance at this too, so if you lose, you fall, or whatever, you gotta do the entire 6 main matches all over again just to get another chance at that. And actually, also to make it worse is that it even counts towards your actual stats if you lose to Nancy, which doesn't make any sense, to be honest, why they include that. Modern Warfare 2. Alright, Modern Warfare 2, which again, some could argue was one of the best Call of Duty games. And really, a lot of it is just really completing main missions for the most part. Well, main missions and any difficulty, but then you had to beat it on veteran difficulty after that. Yeah, then it was also the first game that introduced the Spec Ops missions, and for the most part, it's earning a certain number of stars, and leading up to the big one, which required you to earn all the stars, all 69 stars, which at that point it required you to pretty much go through veteran difficulty on all the Spec Ops missions, which some of them were doable and some of them were kind of challenging. Granted, there were also even 2 of them that required you to have 2 players, which at the time I didn't really have any reliable friends I wanted to do that. And of course, unfortunately, it had to be local co-op. There was no online co-op, but surprisingly, with a lot of work, I was able to actually solo-wise get the co-op modes done by myself. I mean, luckily, it's all kind of done in a spawning pattern. Like if you can remember the pattern as to when the enemies spawn, when and where the enemies spawn, it's not that challenging really. So mostly just memorization. Playing Juggernaut. What else here? Collecting intel. Standard intel and stuff. Okay, but I think that was really it, though. Nothing really too special. Resident Evil 5, which I think in itself had like so many trophies. I think. Right. So a lot of it required you to, like usual, complete the standard game. Then you had to complete the game on multiple difficulties. I don't think the difficulty stacked, so I think you had to go through amateur, then normal, and veteran, and which led you to go into professional mode. Which professional mode RE5 was murder, considering like it was pretty much like one hit and you're dead. And like trying to also play this with an AI partner just made it even more challenging, as the AI is so brain dead. Unfortunately, I guess any word of advice is if you're going to be trying to go professional, get an actual teammate to help you out, and probably I think also maybe get your hands on some infinite ammo weapons. I think you could use infinite ammo. I think there's nothing against you on that one. upgrading weapons, finding the emblems, figurines, helping your partner, working up physical attacks, the works, chain maximum number of combos together in one go, which that kind of required to just have you and your partner go through an enemy having to do combo off of each other, which I think it was had to do three hits altogether to get that trophy. Blood. Yeah, Bad Blood was a challenging one. Well, depends how you want to look at Bad Blood. During the Wesker fight, damage him a set number of times. Essentially, you're trying to damage Wesker, which those who've actually played Resident Evil 5 would know how tough it is to even lay a shot on Wesker to begin with. Yeah, so the goal is to try to get him down, get him stunned within a 7-minute time period, nonetheless. I think the easiest way, technically, would be sneaking up on him with a rocket launcher and actually setting it off. That technically did good work. I mean, granted, the only thing is you'd be sacrificing one of your slots for a rocket launcher. And you only get one chance at it, so if you mess up, you gotta do the fight all over. Okay, so after this point, that's when they introduced the DLC, the versus mode. That's what it was called. Yeah, so they had this online feature where it kind of goes into what they have. They have the two modes, Slayers and Survivors. Slayers is kind of like Mercenaries, where it's either a free-for-all or like a 2v2 type game where you're essentially just trying to get the highest score by defeating enemies, but at the same time you also get points by killing off other players as well. I was gonna say right off the bat, this game was just not made for any competitive match whatsoever, considering the fact that you had to stand in place just to even shoot your gun. I mean, it's not really suited for this. So, I mean, it was an attempt, but I mean, this is not one of those games that should have been competitive-wise. And then you also had Survivors winning 30 against that one. That was a tough one too. But Survivors is basically you're just going after the players themselves to get points, and just trying to win matches off of that. It was pretty insane. And of course, you had to get chaining combos together, chain a 20-hit combo solo-wise, or a chain a 40-hit combo, which can be a little bit challenging, especially when you're trying to avoid other players as well. Although it's almost like they kind of had, when it came to Slayers, it's almost like a written rule, in my opinion. I think from my experience, it was like a written rule where we all stayed at certain spots and not really try to interfere with others' works. I don't know. That's just how it seemed to play out for me, anyway. Okay, unlock all the selectable characters in versus, which this one was kind of a stupid trophy because this one required you to unlock all the characters in the store itself, which doesn't really make any sense because it's the same characters you get in Mercenaries, but you had to separately unlock them in versus mode. And unfortunately, there was actually even more characters after this DLC that you couldn't even use anyway in versus mode either. So seems kind of bad. Then they had the Lost Nightmares. Yeah, that's when they had a couple of additional levels thrown into it, and probably Kung Fu Fighting was another tough one here. Same thing like before, you damage Wesker at the end of the mission. You damage him a set number of times. Unfortunately, this one was a little bit more challenging considering there's no infinite ammo and you are limited on ammo and supplies to begin with in that fight. So, I mean, I think honestly you just got to get lucky. That's all I can really say. And I think at times if you have a feeling that you're going to be losing, or because this is also on a time-based one too, if you think you're going to be losing, you might have to just reset the fight altogether. Then you got Desperate Escape, which I guess really in itself, just defeating 150 enemies in a single playthrough. I mean, at times you're going to be just like camping around just trying to kill off enemies, really. But yeah, that is that. Alright, got Uno. Alright, so I have no idea why I downloaded Uno to begin with. I think it was at the time back in high school. I know it's kind of a weird thing, but back in the time I was still in high school, I would kind of set up like an Uno table during lunchtime, and you know, I had like a whole bunch of friends just gathered around. We would just play endless games of Uno until like the lunch break was over. I don't know, maybe at the time I got so interested in Uno I wanted to play this game, so I found it on the PS3. But here, I mean, trophy wise, I mean, stuff like use draw 4 successfully, win your first game, call out Uno, challenge equal use of a wall draw 4, complete 10 games, earn points in tournament play. The only thing that really sticks out to me here would probably be top 50 in the world, which pretty much required you to be in the top 50 in the world of Uno. And the unfortunate problem with this is the leaderboards do not reset, unfortunately. So the longer you wait, the more points you need just to even get into the top 50. And thereby taking you a lot longer to even try to get. I mean, I think it's still possible for people to try to get this top 51 now, but you're probably spending months, endless months, maybe years, because at the time when I got this trophy, I think within the top 50 you had to. I think it was close to about 90,000 points at the time, but I mean that was back in 2010. I think last time I checked, like a few years back anyway, I think it was like a couple years back. Last time I checked, it was like close to about 200,000 just to even get to the top 50. So yeah, unfortunately, you'd be spending months just trying to get that one. Great. WWE SmackDown vs. Raw 2011, which is the last of the SmackDown vs. Raw games, and overall, I'd say really overall the game itself was okay. I mean, I would say it was better than the recent. Well, I can tell you this: it's better than the recent 2K games, especially what was that 2K20, which was mindless. It was just a huge mess of glitches and bugs and stuff like that. But that kind of seems like it's always the case for 2K. But here with THQ still making these games, the only interesting ones here. I remember Man of 1,004 Holes. This one wasn't really clear as perform 1,004 signature and finishing moves. I think at the time it was kind of unclear whether that meant do we need to do 1,004 individual signature and then 1,004 finisher, or combination of two. I had no idea, and also I kind of think the trophy was a little bit buggy because I don't think it registered some of the moves anyway, unfortunately. And of course, this was at the time when they had still had the Road to WrestleMania storyline still in here. Using the paint tool in the brand, create modes. I mean, when it comes to most of these WWE games, I would spend a lot of endless hours doing stuff in create modes. You know, making my own characters, making my own move sets, making intros. Money in the Bank. And successfully cash in Money in the Bank. I think this is one of the last ones, which I think if I remember, I think the game was kind of playing out in a show-like sequence where like you kind of it kind of progresses every week as to standard matches and stuff like that, and of course it's just trying to find the right moment to really cash in this. That was kind of the problem, because it wasn't really clear as to when you could. It seemed like you were restricted as to when you could cash in the Money in the Bank stuff. I think the only hard one really out of this was probably the last man standing, winning an online Royal Rumble match, which I got lucky and somehow did it on my first try, I think. Maybe it was a second try, but yeah, it's just trying to stay alive to go through a Royal Rumble match was somewhat challenging. I don't remember if there was actually 30 players, 30 actual online players doing it. I don't remember if there was the case. It might have been, but yeah, I mean, that was something. I mean, I got a little bit lucky there. That's all I can say. Alright, so next one, Sports Champions. And Sports Champions was one of the, I guess technically it was one of the starter games for PlayStation Move. And in fact, first time that some of the earlier PlayStation Move bundles included a copy of Sports Champion. And I mean, essentially with Sports Champions, it's just an all-out sports-related game with different activities. And really, out of all this, I say the only interesting ones would probably just trying to go through a tournament. What was it, like the tournament-based mode or whatever? Oh, well, I guess it had to be individual. I guess trying to go through individual cups. That's really it, but that wasn't really trophy-based. I think a lot of this required you to yeah, I think really just a lot of this required you to do certain things in each of the sports related events, but I think the only thing here at the very least, Gold Cup, Champions Cup, yeah, I guess really just for the most part it's just really earning points, earning stars, clearing at least up to the Gold Cup. Yeah, the Champions Cup, I think that was just optional, but you had to clear up to the Gold Cup. Really. Super Stardust HD. Got this one. Well, okay, I remember getting this one like shortly after the PlayStation Network came back. I doesn't remember after the hack that happened back in 2011. One of the things that Sony offered was like a welcome back package, which gave you an opportunity to have like 2 free PS3 and PSP games and like a free month of PlayStation Plus. And I mean, for the most part, Super Stardust was a pretty arcade-esque type space shooter. I mean, I guess in a way it's kind of similar to Asteroids, like a modern version of Asteroids, but only thing here, really the only thing here was probably, I think the only interesting thing here was probably the survival mode, survive 7 minutes without dying in Endless, which it was challenging, I'm not gonna lie. I mean, that one required you to kind of navigate a lot, trying to find a lot of open spots, kind of just pick and choose what to really destroy. And then kind of combining that also with the survive 45 seconds without shooting or using bombs, which, yeah, like I think like every like 10 or so seconds they keep adding more and more obstacles, more challenging just to navigate. Alright, Resistance 3. for Resistance 3, for this one, I'd say this was a little bit more simplified compared to Resistance 2 in terms of trophies. Oh, of course, I guess the only big one here was just beating the game on Superhuman. Again, the hardest difficulty. And, well, of course, a little bit more challenging than Resistance 2, I think. I think that's only because of the fact that since you don't have regenerative health anymore, you have to rely on the health packs and stuff like that. Yeah, getting certain weapon-based challenges out of the way, and then of course upgrading. Well, get a kill with every weapon. Because eventually having to upgrade all your weapons as well. The upgrade, which basically just required you to keep using that certain weapon a certain amount of times, getting a certain number of kills just to upgrade it. Which, I mean, it was better. The weapon gets more and more better the more you use it. But really, that's pretty much all I can think of really useful here, or any memorable trophies here. Granted, the game also had survival mode, and well, yeah, there was no trophies, unfortunately, for that one. I'm not really sure why that was the case. As I mean, it seemed like it would have been an easy opportunity to have some trophies there, like maybe surviving a certain amount, getting a certain number of kills or stuff like that. And weirdly, there's not. I don't think there was any competitive-based trophies here. I don't think there was any competitive trophies. Surprisingly. Then you have Duke Nukem Forever. Everyone's favorite. But granted, growing up, Duke Nukem 3D was the very first video game I've ever played. Yes, I'm like a 6-year-old kid playing an M-rated game at the time, so yeah. But yeah, Duke Nukem Forever. I mean, for one thing, I really wasn't aware of this game's existence until maybe about like 2007, something like that. And I guess at that point, I had to still wait like another 5 years for that game to really come out. But yeah, but considering this game was 12 years in development and we ended up having a mediocre-esque game, well, I mean, at least it's out. Better than nothing. But a lot of the stuff just required you to mess around with the environment. And really just getting... Yeah, wow, that's really it. Just really messing with the environment. I think anything memorable here, honestly, I'd say... well, I guess I would probably say Gunslinger. That was an interesting one where you had to carry Duke's signature gold, his signature gold handgun. You had to carry that throughout the entire campaign, which, considering this game only had a 2-weapon limit, you had to sacrifice it, and you had to have one of your slots being your handgun. So that means at times you're gonna have to keep switching out your second weapon, you know, especially during boss fights. Like, you have to have explosives in order to damage bosses in boss fights. So you're pretty much playing on a limited weapon system as is. So even more to that. That was kind of, yeah. But I mean, you had to carry it from start to finish, in the entire game. So besides that, just going through insane difficulty. Damn, I'm good. Yeah, which I think at that point you take about maybe like 2 or 3 times the amount of damage than normal. And then of course you got that stupid trophy that required you to watch the credits, which, in a weird thing, I kind of do like that, because it kind of forces players to at least watch the credits one time in order to at least get that trophy. So it's kind of almost like forcing, it's kind of like the game developers are forcing the players to watch their credits scene, because, you know, a lot of people will just potentially skip over credits right after they beat the game. And of course they added shortly afterwards they added the Doctor Who Clone Me, which had the return of like Dr. Proton. I mean, granted, I didn't really play the first two Nukem games, but anything here, I'd say. Well, I guess it's kind of the same thing here, just going through the game on the hardest difficulty. But I mean, in itself, though, the Doctor Who Clone Me was a weird DLC, kind of dealing with clones. I mean, you kind of had to dealing a lot with the robots, clones, and then ended up going into space. Tekken Tag Tournaments, which, well, okay, Tekken Tag Tournaments. This one, it was also a combination. This actually came from the Tekken Hybrid game, which basically it came with the Tekken Tag Tournament HD. It came with the prologue to Tekken Tag 2, and then it also came with the movie Blood Vengeance. And I mean, it wasn't that bad for considering the price was like $40, I think. Or I think that's how much I spent anyway. Yeah, for the most part though, I mean, it's the same tech. I mean, if you played Tekken Tag before, it's the same concept here, but you know, it's trying to go through trophy ones. The only thing I can remember is the fact that this, at least according to PSN profiles, this was considered my fastest platinum for any game. Right, for the most part, not wrong about that, considering I think it took me, honestly, it took me barely 4 hours just to platinum this. And I mean, a lot of it just was pretty standard, straightforward, just kind of doing certain wins, certain throws, getting a certain amount of damage in practice mode. Yeah, let's see. Some of the interesting ones, like Judo Legend Ukemi techniques. I didn't really know too much about Ukemi techniques, for one thing. And then, of course, they also had the Tekken Bull added into this as well. Getting 3 strikes. Clear Arcade on the hardest difficulty, which, yeah, is kind of challenging doing that. I remember how you had chicken reverse and attack reversal, so you had to do a reverse on a reversal, which I think normally that's something that's never really gonna happen. Well, at least for me, I mean, it just seems to be something that's never really that useful and never really seems to pop up. But I remember I had to have I ended up having to plug in a second controller just to even try to get that one. Alright. Achieve 200 or more in Tekken Bowl and strike. Well, it just in normal scoring. I would say this. Probably go with Yoshimitsu. Or really any of the robotic characters. You know, like Yoshimitsu, Jack 2, Gun Jack, Prototype Jack, Brian Fury. Any of the machine type characters, because they actually have a crosshair that allows you to aim more better. Tekken Tag 2 Prologue, as I said, I would barely say it's a game, as it's just 4 characters and like a few stages. And that's really, I mean, it's obviously just a prologue, just kind of get you introduced into the new tagging concept. But surprisingly, the prologue even had trophies, which I kind of find odd. That's like having trophies in a demo for a game, which I think that has happened in certain games, but I digress. I mean, for the most part, just doing balcony breaks, tag throws. I think the only thing here, well, I guess the only thing here was just see you in the movies, view all the ending images, which basically required you to beat the arcade mode numerous times to get all the images. Was that Shinkami as that trophy icon? I mean, he was from the movie, but I doubt anyone would remember him. Twisted Metal, the 2012 version, if I'm mistaken. Yeah, so it was kind of a different take for those who are not familiar with Twisted Metal, I mean, it's essentially a card battling game. But how it played out back then was it was just a standard going through each stage, defeating enemies, progress. Here it's kind of the same concept, but they also change up the levels, and they kind of change up story mode in a way where it's you're not really choosing an individual character. Is you only have 3 actual characters in the game itself, and everything else it's kind of all done in factions essentially. And you know, you had to go through each stage, whether it being something like killing enemies, doing races, or I guess at points you had to actually go through a boss fight. And yeah, those boss fights kind of get insane. Let's see. Yeah, this was a TMA. Yeah, I remember this one. Complete story mode without dying or switching cars in the garage. Which... I think the problem with this one was just going through boss fights without dying, because some of the bosses are just insane to deal with. And, I mean, luckily, you could technically cheat your way through this in a way. Well, I mean, you can kind of somewhat make this a little bit easier on yourself by having a save file on the USB drive. And if you do mess up, you can just reload the save file from the extra save file from your USB drive or from the cloud. Just kind of reinstall the save data. Technically, the game doesn't recognize it as you dying. Twisted gold medal in every event and boss fights on twisted difficulty, nonetheless. So, yeah, trying to ramp up the difficulty as crazily as possible. Let's see. Game, complete campaign. Old school, play 2, 3, 4 player split screen local. Well, I didn't have 4 friends, but luckily I somehow had 4 controllers. I think at the time I had like a bunch of extra controllers. Or I had mostly, at the times, a bunch of regular 6-axis controllers, and I still kept them. Because I had a feeling I might need them in the future, I don't know. Blah blah blah, give me the trophy. Let's see. I think Calypso achieved the highest online rank. Actually, I guess along with the lines with online, the all sales are final. Win at least 1 ranked online game per day for 30 straight days. This one I really hate. And it's all for a bronze too for that. But yeah, you had to go through, win a match. It seemed pretty. Okay, granted, it seemed pretty easy enough. Just go through each day, win a match. But you have to do it 30 consecutive days, and you know, if you miss a day by accident, or unfortunately at times, I think the stats, the leaderboards were a little bit buggy, so even if we did get the win, it sometimes didn't count it, or maybe it took a while for it to update. So on the safe side, I kept having to, I just ended up trying to win about 2 or 3 games to ensure myself I got at least 1 win that day. But I mean, you kind of have to work around the game schedule for the 30 straight days. And I remember at one point, I literally got my win for that day just shy of like 20 minutes right before the PlayStation Network had maintenance for the rest of that day. So, kind of a close call there. Metal Gear Solid 4, which weirdly, the game came out in 2008, and it didn't even have trophies. For some reason, it was 4 years later, shortly after they shut down the Metal Gear Online, that's when they added trophies. And, of course, a lot of the stuff was stuff I've already done in the past. But unfortunately, you couldn't use your old save file, because they marked the save files, I guess, for different versions. I think really the only thing worth think the only useful one here, or the only memorable one I can really think of, is probably Songs of the Battlefield, which, according to this, it's just obtaining all the iPod tracks, or excluding the ones in passwords. It may seem easy just by description standards, but the thing you have to keep in mind is, since you have to unlock all the iPod tracks, the thing is, two required tracks, two of the tracks, you can only get after beating the game. Certain, well, okay, two of them required you to kind of beat the game in certain ways, but I remember one of the tracks requires you to get the big boss emblem, which for that one you had to go through the game on the hardest difficulty, no healing items, no kills, no alerts, and you had to do it in 5 hours. Yeah, I mean, luckily I did manage to do that beforehand, before the trophy system was implemented, but just the fact to get through, I had to get through the entire game like that again, just to get one of the tracks. And then the second track required you to get all the emblems, which, for the most part, it may seem easy, but the thing is, it required you to, at the bare minimum, to beat the game 8 times. Yeah, along with the big boss emblem stuff, at the bare minimum, you had to beat the game 8 times to get all the emblems, just to get that last track, which I just think it was just way over the top just for one trophy. Okay, Welcome Park. Unfortunately, some of the trophies don't have any timestamps because I ended up doing this. I ended up earning trophies on the Vita. This was the first Vita game, quote unquote game. It's really just more of a introduction into the Vita itself. But really, the only thing here. I mean, it just kind of gets you introduced into the workarounds of how the Vita works. You know, all the features it has. I think really the only thing here even useful, or anything memorable, I say probably the probably the puzzle stuff. That's all I can say. Having to do it. I think really the puzzle stuff is the only thing here. Do a 15-piece puzzle, 50 seconds. And I guess also along with the Vita, Resistance Burning Skies, which kind of a spin-off of the Resistance series itself, or I guess it technically took place after Resistance. Well, actually, I think it would technically take place a little bit right before Resistance 2. I think that would be the case. Oh. And with that, I'd say I don't really think, honestly, there's anything memorable for this. Maybe just getting certain kills and stuff like that. Well, I guess maybe upgrade all the weapons in single player. That's the only thing useful, probably, or only thing memorable. Modern Warfare 3, which I kind of forgot this was broken up in so many packs, but yeah. So Modern Warfare 3. Again, a lot of stuff just required you to beat the game certain difficulties, and well, again, certain regular mode, any difficulty, and then of course you had to beat the game at the very least on the hardest mode. I know, veteran as usual. Yeah, beating the game veteran, getting intel like usual, and of course, kind of like Modern Warfare 2, it does have Spec Ops missions, which at least the Spec Ops missions were, I think they were a little bit more entertaining in this game, but didn't have that. They didn't really have that many missions, though. Normally, well, I mean, I think there was only like 16 missions compared to like the 23 in the last one, but that's when they eventually started adding the DLC for additional stuff here, which I think memorable wise, besides being a veteran. Let's see. Well, I know for Negotiator, rescue all the hostages. Negotiator, which required a lot on timing, really. Well, you had to be quick, but then you had to kind of also manage as to where the hostages could be. That's that. Ironclad and kill switch. Finish your tank. Finish with the tank at full health, which a lot of this. Yeah, this mission, you had like a battle tank that kind of assisted you, but get this one to have full health, you kind of have to prevent the tank from even moving, so you're kind of having to... you're kind of almost having to complete the mission without even using the tank itself at all. Okay. Arctic Recon. Which... nothing special here, to be honest. We were just beating it on the time limit. Vertigo. Kill all juggernauts after they land. Special delivery and light them up. Well. Stab 5 enemies. Okay, stab 5 enemies stun in a row. Yeah, so. I mean, they had like a bunch of Spec Ops missions thrown into it. It's kind of how it was, I guess. Tekken Tag 2. This is the actual release of Tekken Tag 2. And with that... to be honest, I think I spent like the least amount of time with Tekken Tag 2 because I think it's got to the point where it was just... I think they just added too much into the game. Because I think Tekken 6 had a decent balance. I think Tekken Tag 2... well, I think for one thing, it was just lacking in certain features I kind of wish they had. Like a story mode, maybe a scenario campaign, whatever. But a lot of the stuff was just kind of the usual stuff like in the original Tekken Tag. Getting certain damage, certain number of wins. Fight Labs, which in itself was somewhat interesting. It was like a tutorial slash mini campaign. Earn Fortunate Fighter. Earn 3 lucky boxes, which I hated that one. That was just nothing but plain luck. Even get that one. Okay. Yes, I think honestly that was... I mean, Tekken Tag 2 was... it was a decent game. But, you know, to me, it wasn't something as memorable as Tekken 6. Max Payne 3. I mean, I was a huge fan of Max Payne back in the old days. Let's see. Well, a lot of the stuff required beating the game or doing certain stuff within the game. Okay, well, I guess unfortunately, a lot of the stuff though required you to be on free aim mode. Well, the game had like 3 types of aiming. You had hard lock, soft lock, and then free aim. Obviously, the hard lock and soft lock were basically auto aiming features, making it easier for you to aim. But all these trophies though really required you to be on free aim, so you kind of had to manually aim in itself. But I mean, it was something you kind of had to get used to, unfortunately, which was kind of necessary for future some of the other trophies. I do like how a lot of these trophies. I do like how these trophies were just pretty much taking quotes from the previous games, 1 bullet at a time. With practice, bravado, a few hundred bullets back. I mean, for those who've ever played Max Payne, well, 1 and 2, you kind of have you kind of can remember all these iconic lines. Unlock all factions. Here's to all my friends. I think, okay, the only one memorable one, where was it at? Well, one, yeah, the Shadows Rush Me. Unlocking complete New York Minute hardcore. Yes. Hardly anyone's even completed this, even after I've beat. Okay, I got lucky and managed to do this on my first attempt, but essentially, you basically have to beat the game, the entire game, start to finish, and you are under a time limit. Although, really, the time limit wasn't really a huge factor, because since you kept repeatedly getting kills, by the time you got to like mission chapter 4, you kind of had plenty of time. But yeah, I mean, you're on a time limit, and at any point, if you die, fail a mission, fail an objective, or someone else dies or whatever, someone important, then you are having to start all the way back to the beginning. And good luck with that. But like I said, I got lucky, did it on my first attempt. But granted, I must have beaten the game at least like 5 times before that, so I kind of knew what to expect. And actually, I guess to make it a little bit easier on myself, I did unlock the gold weapons. Some of them give you additional ammo, or some give you a little bit more firepower. But I mean, I didn't any little bit help though. Yeah, which I think in the end took me about 3.5 hours to get that one. Really here. And just getting a certain level. And of course they have a bunch of updates for it. The local justice pack. Well, okay, I hated this one. Unfortunately, a lot of these packs are focusing on online-based trophies, and I do admit I did have to break down and eventually get some people from communities and other groups to help me out on this. Air Ace. Get 2 kills in a single shoot dodge in the Departure Lab. I mean, the problem with some of this is it requires you to be in specific maps and just be lucky enough just to even accomplish this. But I mean, good luck even trying to get the right map. I mean, that's all based on luck and voting. Mirror Express checkout. Kill 4 players in 3 seconds in the Hero Palace, which legitly is impossible. I mean, like, I must have tried so many different combinations. I tried to legitly. In the end, I ended up having to team up with some players just to get this trophy. It wasn't even just me. I think it was like me and like at least like 8 other players who were just all teaming up to try to get this trophy. I mean, we're just ignoring the objective. Hostage negotiation. Again, I had some people to help me out just to make this a little bit easier. Painful memories. I think this one was actually doable for the most part, anyway. Yeah. God, remember Deathmatch Made in Heaven. Well, the thing is, I kind of had to go through the game again at this point because they added in a challenge mode, which you had to get specific. I think you had to get a specific challenge or whatever done with each fight, or something like that. I really can't remember. I remember 3 blind mice, where you had to blind 3 people at the same time with pepper spray. The problem with that is the pepper spray has very small range, and I don't know in what possible situation you're gonna have 3 people lined up so you can hit them all with pepper spray at the same time. Like, I don't think that's ever gonna be an actual thing or an actual situation you're gonna fall in. Yeah, but then they also added in the dead man walking stuff. For those who remember, the dead man walking, at least they started that back in Max Payne 2, but how that was a somewhat semi. It was kind of like a survival mode in a way. But here they kind of changed it up for Max Payne 3 to make it more allowed to have co-op. But I think you have to be in co-op for that one. All right. PlayStation All-Stars. I got the PS3 and Vita version. Unfortunately, the trophies didn't stack. Unfortunately. Well, I kind of wish they had cross trophies. That would have been a lot easier. But yeah, PlayStation All-Stars. A lot of people like to say is the Super Smash Brothers of PlayStation, which I mean that's one way of putting it. But honestly, I think PlayStation All-Stars had potential, but it just. Unfortunately, it just wasn't all there. Like, if they had spent more time in development, added more characters and stages, I think it probably would have actually had a good shot to becoming a good contender for, for kind of almost like becoming the next Smash Bros. It probably could have. Yeah, of course, a lot of this required just to beat arcade mode with certain characters. And of course doing like level 3s with each of them, but really I don't really think anything was memorable, to be honest. I mean it was just standard stuff here. And then for some reason they added the Fearless one, which is just one trophy. Perform level 3 with Narco. I don't know, it's just weird they added just a single trophy for it, but I guess they wanted to add something. Alright. DMC Devil May Cry. A lot of people kind of do despise this game. I'm in the minority because I actually think this game was decent, but acquiring weapons. Let's see. Completing the game on certain difficulty modes, like usual, getting kills, getting a triple S. I think 100% triple S. Only thing here, I guess Jackpot, that would be the more memorable one here. Complete all missions of Nephilim with a triple S rank, which, I mean, Nephilim is actually not even the hardest difficulty. It's kind of about normal difficulty, but trying to get a triple S rank on each mission, actually even that technically is not that bad, considering you were only graded on 3 criteria: time, stylish points, and then completion. By completion, like getting the lost souls, getting the keys, completing the secret missions or so that you have, getting some of the lost, getting a lot of collections done. But luckily, it saves, so that once you've completed 100% on a mission, it always says 100% for that factor anyway. So then at that point you just have to worry about time and stylish points. But that's kind of how it was anyway. And then it had Virgil's Downfall. Yeah, so basically it takes place right after the main game. We played Virgil, trying to claim his demon-like kind, and really wasn't anything too memorable, to be honest. I'd say maybe just going through like difficulty modes for this game. I mean, there was only 6 missions, but it was still on the challenging side. Alright. Resident Evil 6. Beating the campaign with each character, which I think was the kind of overkill that there were 4 separate campaigns. Then complete the game on Professional. Luckily, Professional here wasn't as bad compared to... it wasn't as bad compared to Resident Evil 5, and actually I ended up eventually doing... In this game, I ended up eventually doing the No Hope difficulty, which was like even more difficult than Professional. And you were kind of more limited on supplies and stuff like that. Okay. So I'm gonna go through it. I don't think there was anything special, to be honest. Just collecting all the serpent medals. That was really it. Then they had the individual DLCs for this Onslaught. let's see, achieve a 30 combo chain. That was probably the only interesting one there. Survivors. Luckily, okay, at least for one thing is that you could, in this game you can actually move while shooting, so I mean it seemed a little bit more sense to add competitive element to this game, and I mean at least this works better than RE5, but I digress. Then I got Kung Fu Fighting, survive to the end using only physical attacks, which kind of your best bet on that would be using Jake since he has a bunch of physical attacks anyway. Predator. Okay, defeat the Ustanak 20 times. Defeat Ustanak with only 8 remaining. Okay, granted, I think some of this did require me to have some people help me out. Ending with Siege. Defeat 100 player control agents and 100 player control creatures. A lot of just was a lot on. I wouldn't say it was. This one wasn't. Siege wasn't really tough. It was just so long to accomplish. Yeah, I mean it was just so long to accomplish. Took ever. All right. Well, last one to stop is Tekken Revolution. Tekken Revolution was like a standalone PS3 version of Tekken, and essentially they basically just took the Tekken Tag 2 game, stripped on the tag feature, and adding in a bunch of these new stuff like special arts, critical arts, the parameter system, which was on paper it was an okay idea, but it just created a huge mess of unbalanced matches and potential hacks. Yeah, but there really wasn't anything memorable here. But yeah, I mean Tekken Revolution was an interesting game. I mean, it even introduced Elisa for the first time, which who would later return in Tekken 7 as a canon character. Alright, I think for right now I'm probably gonna leave it at that. I'm gonna probably be splitting up this little trophy reminisce for a few videos, trying to split us up. I'm trying to split this up in some fashion. I haven't really fully decided on that, but wait and see how this turns out. Alright, so I'll just stop here, pick this up for another video, because it's getting a little bit lengthy as it is. Alright guys, this is DevilHunterXYZ, and until next time.